Good morning, everyone. Thank you very, very much for being with us today as we are excited to talk about the largest seizure of fentanyl in the history of the Sheriff's Office. And this is all about remarkable work into the two largest drug cartels in Mexico. But before I do that, let me introduce to you, first and foremost, our prosecutor, Brian Haas, state attorney for the 10th Judicial Circuit, and in my estimation, the finest prosecutor, not only in the state of Florida, but anywhere in the United States. He does the right thing. He's going to speak to us in a little while. We also have Austin Leal from Auburndale Police Department with us today, Terry Story with us, Mark Brutnell from FDLE, and he's going to also speak today. We have Chris Nelson, Brandon Shealy, who is a supervisor. We have Javier Lopez from Border Patrol with us, Michael Garland from HSI, Jim Gill from U.S Postal Inspection Service. Why do I list them? Because when you do investigations of this magnitude, no single agency can successfully do them. It takes us all working together. And let me underscore that there's no light between any of us. We're shoulder to shoulder to protect the people of the United States from this evil, evil drug, fentanyl. And I want to highlight before I start giving you the details, and I'm going to give you a 30,000-foot deep view of this, because obviously there will be other investigations into these cartels. But I want to give you an example. Between 2018 and 2023, 340,000 people died of fentanyl overdose deaths in the United States. Did you hear what I said? I didn't stutter. You can't count that high on your fingers and toes. 340,000 people in the United States died of fentanyl overdose between 2018 and 2023. What's important to recognize that? Why it's important to recognize that is simply this. Do you see anyone in the United States up in arms about that? Anyone? Do you see anyone saying, we've got a crisis on our hands? Do you see anyone saying, we have an epidemic on our hands? Do you see it leading the evening news? And the answer to all of that is no, no, no. Well, in fact, we do have a crisis when 340,000 people have died in 5 years in the United States of America from this overdose of fentanyl. So I ask you this. What would we be doing if 340,000 people died from the food served in the cafeterias at elementary schools in that period of time? How would we react? How would we react if 340,000 people died in county jails from us feeding bad food? There would be storms. There would be people fired and unelected. There would be congressional investigations. Every state would be doing investigations. But yet we pretty much sat silent while 340,000 people in the United States died from fentanyl overdose. And where does the fentanyl come from? It's coming across our southern border. Now, the good news is, since the border's been shut down, we've seen some drop in that. Since these massive investigations have occurred, we've seen a drop in that. But I want to get back to where I started. And where I started was simply this. We all work together to protect people and keep people alive and safe. So let me introduce you to the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco cartel. The Sinaloa cartel has been weakened some with the arrest of its leadership. They're actually working together some with the Jalisco cartel, which is the two largest drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. They call it transnational criminal enterprises. These people are violent. These people want your money, and they don't care whether or not they take your life. So we start out with these two groups of very dangerous people delivering a very dangerous drug. This is not the only drug that they deal with, but we're going to focus on fentanyl today. I'll give you the 30,000-foot overview. It started in July of 24 with a fentanyl pill investigation. And between July 24th to January of 25, there were 8 kilos of fentanyl pills, or 80,000 pills, that came in from Phoenix. They came across the border in Mexico to Phoenix and ultimately to us. There were 6 operations during this total time with about 8 kilos of drugs that were seized. And then in April 28th of 25, we seized 4 more kilos, 40,000 more pills. It was delivered by Regina Headsmith of the Sinaloa cartel. So these are the 2 representatives we arrested from the Sinaloa cartel. These are the folks that were assigned to the Jalisco cartel in the pending operations. So we ultimately arrested her for delivering 4 kilos of fentanyl pills, and she delivered those to Lakeland, Florida. She was ultimately arrested on June the 19th in Maricopa, Arizona, Maricopa County, Arizona. And then there was Adrian Munga. He flew from Phoenix to Tampa to Bartow to pick up the cash for the 4,000 pills. He was arrested on June the 17th when he came a second time to bring us 4 kilos of. So between all of their transactions, we seized 35 pounds of fentanyl pills, or about 160,000 pills. Now, 1 pill is a hit, 1 pill. But understand, we had 160,000 hits. But that's not enough. The good dealers will tell you when you buy these fentanyl pills that, hey, if your body's not used to it, don't take more than a half pill, or we suggest you start with a quarter of a pill because it'll kill you. Now, your drug dealer's telling you that you should start with a quarter pill because if you're not an experienced doper, it'll kill you. Then move up to a half pill and then a full pill. These pills are pressed in Mexico. There's no quality control over this. So you don't know how powerful this pill is. But 160,000 pills. Now, this Jalisco operation was totally separate. It was not pills. This Jalisco operation was all powder or bricked up. And it also came from traffickers out of Mexico, not related to the pill side. And the investigations started and proceeded when let me get past my notes here, because we took the Sinaloa group off, and then we started working on April 2025 on the powdered operation. And we worked from Alberto Diaz. He flew from California to Tampa to Bartow, and he brought drugs. He was a transport guy. Oh, by the way, he brought his daughter with him. The two of them were involved in transport. We learned that they transported for the Jalisco operation and also picked up money. We found out that Gloria Trujillo Duque, who's 44, from Atlanta, she brought 5 kilos that originated in Mexico. She came from Atlanta, and she was the money person for the cartel. Her job was to do the finance. Keep in mind that in addition to that, we had a cousin to Miguel who brought 5 kilos in. She's the only one that's on an immigration hold for violating her permit to come 25 miles inside the U.S. border. Somehow when she ended up here, we calculated she was just a little past her 25-mile limit. On April 28th, we got 5 kilos from Mexico. And how are they delivering it to us? In batteries. You see the pictures, and it's in the battery. That's right. So when you see someone on the side of the road, maybe putting a new battery in their car, you think to yourself, they've got a bad battery. They had to get another one. Well, what we know is 5 kilos of fentanyl will go in this battery. Now, let me tell you this. The battery still works, okay? So they rigged the battery so that it cranks the car. It actually works. And then they just take the battery out, deliver the battery to you. You think it's a bad battery. They're going to take it in to exchange it. They put another battery in the car. Well, in fact, they've delivered 5 kilos. May 24th, we take a delivery in Auburndale. The Auburndale police were vital in this operation. And we seized another 29 pounds of pure fentanyl. Let me say that again. 29 pounds of pure fentanyl. So between the two operations and the different deliveries of the drugs, we looped all of these folks in as either couriers of the drugs or financiers to pick up the money or transport people. And we seized a total of 64 pounds. 64 pounds of fentanyl in these two operations. That's enough to overdose and kill 14.5 million people. Let me say that again. Our detectives and our agents from the federal, the state, and the local level potentially saved the lives of up to 14.5 million people. Or think of it this way. We seized enough drugs to overdose and kill everyone in the state of Ohio, or everyone in the state of Pennsylvania, or everyone in the state of Illinois, and have drugs to kill people left over. So when you look at these undercover agents that risk their lives in doing these types of operations, and then you see it as a risk to their life just to handle this stuff, let alone the violence and the guns and all the other issues they have to traverse in a high-level, large-scale investigation, you understand why our detectives and our agents from the state and the federal government are simply the very best. So will they ever get the appropriate thanks for saving lives? Absolutely not. But the reality is, while there's 340,000 people that died because these people were greedy and wanted money, and they didn't care that you died between 2018 and 2023, we know an immeasurable amount of people would have died with this 64 pounds of drugs that these people brought and they didn't care about you or your loved ones or your children, but we did. And that's why people are alive today, because of the work that our folks did. Let me first turn this over to Mr. Haas, our state attorney, and our colleague and the prosecutor who's going to make sure that these folks are held accountable by our criminal justice system. Mr. Haas.
Thank you, Sheriff. You know, I think that when you consider the numbers and the amounts of drugs here, it can be overwhelming when you consider the danger to our community and all the people that are coming and going. These cases just don't make themselves. They don't just magically appear. The reason why you keep coming to these press conferences here in Polk County is because of the leadership of Sheriff Grady Judd. He is the one that absolutely insists that we do not let up, that we're going to continue to pursue the folks that will bring these dangerous drugs into our community. And the wonderful detectives and law enforcement officers that are working with him, both from the sheriff's office and the partner agencies, they are true heroes to everything that you're seeing here today. They're the ones that basically put their lives on hold and do this job when it may be very inconvenient for them for personal reasons, family reasons, but they keep up the fight and they insist that these cases are made. And the quality of the cases is critical. Arrests are very important, but we know that true justice comes at the end of the case when these very dangerous people are put in prison for a very long time. And that's why the details, the attention to detail, working very hard to make sure that we have a prosecutable case that we can get across the finish line is absolutely critical. And what a great honor it is to be a prosecutor in the state of Florida with a governor and a legislature that supports us by making sure that we have the laws that we need with very strong mandatory minimum prison sentences and adequate funding for all of the operations. It's so important, and it is different in Florida. So it's great to be a state attorney here, and particularly in the 10th Circuit, and partnering with Sheriff Grady Judd and all of the great state partners that we have. So we are ready to take these cases. We've been working with the detectives from the beginning, and this is an important day, but there's a lot still to come on these cases, and my prosecutors are ready to go. So Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Let me introduce you to Mark Brutnell. He is Special Agent in charge of the Tampa Field Office, and he's going to speak with us today about a very important piece of our ability to do these investigations. Mark?
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Commissioner Mark Glass, I'm Mark Brutnell, the FDLE Special Agent in charge for Tampa Bay. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to stand along Sheriff Judd, State Attorney Bryant Haas for today's announcement. Today's arrests are one of many that have resulted from the funded granted by the State Assistance for Fentanyl Eradication, or as we call it, SAFE, which is a statewide program. I'm honored to also say that the Polk County Sheriff's Office has done quite an amazing job when it comes to the SAFE program. So I pulled some numbers for the SAFE program just specifically to Polk County Sheriff's Office. In 2 years, there have been 13 approved SAFE cases with the Sheriff's Office. Of those 13 cases, under Sheriff Judd's leadership and the investigative team in the back there, 42 arrests have been made, 48.5 kilos, or as Sheriff has talked about today, over 100 pounds of fentanyl has been seized, in addition to 12.5 kilos of cocaine. So the entire state of Florida, the Polk County Sheriff's Office is responsible for 26% of the seizures statewide when it comes to fentanyl. To put that into perspective, what they've done here with their cases, they have saved over 24 million lives. The 100 pounds of fentanyl that these folks have seized is enough to kill the entire state of Florida. That's very scary. The success of this operation is a reminder about the importance of partnerships and support, not just between agencies, but from the top down. As Governor DeSantis and our legislature, they continue to work to support law enforcement and ensure the protection of Florida's communities. I'd like to personally thank the investigative team. I worked narcotics for 10 years, a long time ago. And I can tell you, you guys have a tremendous amount of patience. These folks don't have watches. They drive me crazy. See you at 2 o'clock, which means midnight. Your dedication and your ability to just stand fast and continually to work these cases is very impressive. So in Florida, keeping our families safe is a top priority. And this case is a great example of the tireless and dangerous work being done by the folks in the back. Again, thank you for all your hard work. I appreciate your time today. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir. Let me give you one last look at this and to tell you what some of the problem is in areas of this country. Gerardo Valencia Cervantes, he's 34 from Georgia. In 2021, he was arrested at a lab with 60 kilos of liquid meth. He was given 4 years. And he's out and we're arresting him again. This guy is evil in the flesh. He's personally responsible for the death of many children and many people across the United States. These operations we talk about that we do are not Polk County centric, but they're Polk County investigated centric because of the agents with FDLE and my narcotics team, which simply is the very best. But think about it. How in God's green earth did this guy get out of jail in 4 years when he's got 60 kilos of meth? And he's on to kill other people. This is real, folks. And I want you to understand that it's not over. We're going to continue to work together. We're going to focus on those that would traffic drugs throughout the United States. And if every law enforcement agency in the country cared as much as the feds that work with us, FDLE, the local police departments, imagine how many lives we would save, because we know that they have been, for the last 5 years, flooding the United States of America with fentanyl and with meth and with cocaine. And our prayers are, with the border sealed, that would dry up significantly. But where there's a will, there's a way, there's a new way that we'll have to figure out how to catch these folks. But I can tell you, the best in the business that are wanting to save the lives of your children are working together. Thank you. God bless you. And are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, were these individuals specifically operating in Polk County, or were they brought here through your communications with the undercover detective?
These folks are international drug smugglers. So during our investigation, we determined that they are international drug smugglers. And they were brought here because they will smuggle drugs any place. So if it weren't for our undercover work, a person could buy the drugs in Polk County or Florida or any other state, and they would deliver them, they would sell them. These are the traffickers. These are with the Jalisco and the Sinaloa cartels that are manufacturing and running huge illegal operations, transnational organized criminals. And what we're catching is, if you will, their field agents. So the reality of it is that the reason they were arrested here, or the reason the case was made here, was because of the unbelievable work by our detectives, our FDLE agents, our city police, our federal partners. And the reality is, don't think for a second all of these drugs would have come to this county. But don't think for a second that some of them wouldn't have if we hadn't have been the guys buying them and ultimately arresting the people.
And curious about these pills that are disguised as blue oxycodone pills.
Yes.
Because do people who take them know that they're pure fentanyl? But you said that they're warned and they probably don't want to kill off all their customers.
Yes.
So
Well, some of the history you can go back to. If you go back, 20 years ago, when the state was wide open and people were coming from all over the United States to buy Oxycontin and oxycodone pills from pop-up pharmacies. Well, some of them, the oxycodones, 30s, were the pill that was popular. Florida shut all that down. Pam Bondi, by the way, was our Attorney General at the time. Now she's our U.S. Attorney General, one of our friends, and did a remarkable job with FDLE and other agencies across the state, to include us. So what happened? There was the market there, so that's when Sinaloa and the cartels stepped in, and they said, hey, not only will we sell this fentanyl, but we'll also pill press it to look like the oxycodone 30s. So it was a gap to fill that quote unquote legal government permitted gap at the time, which obviously wasn't legal, or the government didn't sanction it either. So that's kind of the long story to this.
but the users are buying it knowing it's fentanyl.
Yes, absolutely. But yes, because it's their substitute. It's their substitute for the opioid that they got before. And once again, the good dealers, quote unquote, the good dealers are saying, don't take a whole pill. You don't know how strong the pill is. You don't know what your tolerance is. Start with a quarter of the pill.
So Sheriff, would you say that since the border has been secured, that there has been a decrease in the drug flow that you've seen to Polk County?
Yes. Not to Polk County, across the border. Since the border has been sealed, the reports to us is there's a decrease in the volume of drugs that's getting across. Some is still getting across. Make no mistake about that. I don't want to suggest that it's not. But with operations, Governor DeSantis asked the legislature to fund this SAFE program so that we could work at this high level and intercept these big-time traffickers. So we were doing that because the administration had the border wide open and the drugs were pouring across virtually unabated. Now it's becoming more difficult, and our undercover detectives and agents are hearing from their traffickers. It's become more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult to get drugs across the border. So yes, I'm still mesmerized at the morons that think open borders are all right. But one of the issues that we have to be concerned with, one of the many issues, is that meth, fentanyl, cocaine was pouring across the southern border, virtually unabated because of the policy of allowing everyone into the country illegally. So at the end of the day, those that think it's all right to come across the border illegally and victimize our people, I can show you 340,000 dead people from fentanyl alone. And that fentanyl came from Mexico, and it didn't come here legally. Okay, thank you all very much. God bless you. Have a good day.